Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are returning, you know that my show is about celebrating artists and their body of worth. For those of you who are here for the first time, thank you for joining us. I'm very, very excited about today's guest. I have been a huge fan of Adrienne Barbeau my whole life. I just love her. I, like many, became familiar with her through Maude. But of course, there's Grease, there's her Broadway career, there is her film career. She's done horror films, she's done everything. And she has a best-selling autobiography, There Are Worse Things I Can Do. But there are also other books that she's written. And she has the genre of horror films. And as we were putting this show together, I reached out to my editor and my co-producer, Chuck Pennington, and I asked if he would put together a montage celebrating Adrienne Barbeau. Now, there are so many layers to her life and career that some of them you may not see in the montage. But don't worry, today we're going to be celebrating everything that Adrienne Barbeau is all about. And I hope that you enjoy this montage. I hope that Adrienne enjoys this montage.
Would you welcome Adrienne Barbeau?
Miss Adrienne Barbeau. Hey.
I try not to predict the future.
Millicent, you look charming.
Me? You haven't seen our equipment.
What are you, some sort of sexual deviant come to ravage me?
No.
Too bad.
This is a war between men and women. Anything short of cannibalism is just beating around the bush.
Get out of my way, Henry, or I swear to God you'll be wearing your balls for earrings.
Silence her.
So please, just behave yourself tonight.
If you do not agree, you will be thrown into the piranha pit and you will die. Painfully.
You'll have to do something about your dog.
What happened to the help I hired?
Adrienne came in with high-heeled shoes and went down to bowling shoes. Good ball.
Oh, Richard. First, you have to give me your editor's name and number. And secondly, if I could get a copy of that, I haven't seen some of that stuff. I
have to tell you, and I'm going to give a shout out to Chuck Pennington. When I started doing these shows and he came into my life, he was the greatest thing to happen for me. So I'm thrilled that you enjoyed it, and I will put you in touch with each other.
Oh my gosh, what a talent.
He is absolutely the best.
I still have the bowling ball, and I still have the bowling shoes, but I've never seen that clip. That's
Well, I'm thrilled that you liked it. I want to ask you, before we jump into everything that we're going to talk about today, obviously today marks 255 days since the Broadway theaters shut down. And of course, that means across the country, so many of our artists are out of work. How are you dealing in the midst of this crazy world that we find ourselves in?
You know, I've been very fortunate. I just returned from New Zealand, where I was doing a guest star role on a Netflix series.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my time, the last 2 months, have been spent editing a book that the original director of Grease, Tom Moore, and the producer of Grease, Ken Waisman, and I are putting together, hopefully to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Grease, which will be coming up February of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been working on that. And when I'm not acting, when I'm not on a set, I do video describing for the blind.
Oh, good for you.
I do television series, I do features, and I've been able to do that from my home because my son, who is a music producer, has his studio here. So I've been able to continue to do that. So, and I've washed a lot of windows. I've mopped a lot of floors.
No, I have to tell you, just before we went live, I have a message for you from our dear friend Carol Demas. And she said, I hope that you'll talk about the book. And I'm thrilled that you brought it up because I didn't know if it was something that we would be able to talk about. And we will talk a little bit about Grease a little later. But as I said to you before we went live, I have been listening to your audiobook, which I have been loving. And I am just amazed, Adrienne, with your honesty and how brutally honest you are about every aspect of your life, warts and all. You put it out there. It's not a tell-all book. It's your story. It's your story. And I appreciate this. And there are a couple of things that I come away with. First of all, the quote that is on the promo that I used is that you, and I know I'm paraphrasing a little bit, that your work does not define who you are, and that you don't even think of it as work, that you've enjoyed it so much and you've had this great journey. Another aspect that you talk about in the introduction to your book is the fact that, you know, when you sat down to write this book, that you had never even kept journals growing up, and that it was just a lot of recall and coming back. And there are moments of your life where you went back and you looked at certain things that you had written over the years. And I want to go back to one specific moment. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you were either 5 or 6 years old, and something that your teacher wrote. And it really, as I'm listening to this, it hit me, right here. So if you can take us back, and we'll start our journey there.
Okay. Yeah. I think for some reason I seem to remember 3rd grade, but it could have been before that. Mm-hmm. And on a report card, the teacher wrote, Adrienne thinks she's better than everyone else, or something like that. Well, that was mortifying and terrifying. Not terrifying, mortifying, embarrassing, painful. And because that obviously was something you shouldn't think. And so I made a definite decision at whatever age that was, that nobody would ever think that I thought that I was better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And, I would, there's another word that I use and I can't even think of it now, But I just basically, squelched that part of my personality so that when time came for me to pursue my career, there was a real, I don't know if you'd say lack of self-confidence. It wasn't that, because I never thought, oh, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a, boy, I haven't thought about this for so long. I remember, being in New York, being on Broadway, doing Tevye's daughter, Hodel.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taking part in a bioenergetic class or something. And the woman that was leading it said, okay, I want to go around the room and I want each of you to say what you want. And I couldn't say, I want to be a star,
Mm-hmm.
Because that wasn't, that wasn't nice. That wasn't polite. That wasn't.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, was there ever a time in your life where you said, I want to be a star? Or were you just going through life, hoping to have a legitimate career?
Well, that's what it came down to. But at that time, in that moment, the woman said to me, how do you expect to achieve what you want if you can't even ask for what you want, But no, when I finally realized that there were people who earned a living doing what it was I loved to do, performing or acting, it was like, oh, well, I'll try that, And I don't remember ever thinking, oh, I want to be a star. I want to be a celebrity. It was like, I want to be able to support myself.
Well, it's interesting. I always think, for myself, when I was 13 years old, I knew that this was the path that I wanted to be on. And I wanted to be in this business and I wanted to go after this. Again, listening to your book, I get this impression, you were born in Sacramento and growing up in California, that the opportunities were coming your way, but you never really thought of it as a career path. And even when you made the decision to come to New York, you were coming to New York to study.
Yes, yeah. I started out doing musical comedy in a community theater situation. It wasn't a tiny community. It was San Jose, California, and it was a huge organization. And I sort of fell into it. But I loved it. And that organization had put together a musical comedy revue called Showtime on Broadway. I think there were 12 of us, 16 of us, I'm not sure. And the week after I graduated high school, I got on my first plane ride and flew from Travis Air Force Base in Sacramento, I think it was, to Yokohama or Yokosuka or something in Japan. We were hired by the State Department to do a 3-month tour entertaining the GIs. Mm-hmm. We were right up on the DMZ. They shot and killed 3 fellas that had been at one of our shows. I was 18 years old. I didn't even know people fought with each other, but that was my first, I guess you could say, professional job, because we got paid $7 a day and we were singing and dancing and it was great. And then I came back and I had a scholarship at San Francisco State and I started school. And there was nobody in my family that was in the theater. And I hadn't grown up watching TV or going to movies or anything. But I did another community theater production with a woman who had been in New York, and she'd been in an off-Broadway play, a musical. And she said to me, and study, that's where all the teachers are. And, you could study music, singing and acting and all of that. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll do that. And so I thought to myself, if I'll go to New York and I'll try and, get a job as an actor. Wouldn't that be incredible? And if nothing happens by the time I'm 25, I'll go back and get my degree and I'll teach acting. I mean, that's all I sort of knew. And so I did. I just went to New York, and sort of it was never.
And I love the fact that you came to New York and that you didn't really have a major clue as to who these major players were that you were meeting and working with, like Stella Adler and.
Not my favorite.
Oh yes, yeah. But don't you think that she? I mean, I don't want to put. Well, describe what your experience was in her class. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I acted in Stella Adler's class for a month and a half until she screamed at me for wearing a hat to class. And I thought, you know what, this is not for me. She just, and in those days, I mean, I know there are people who just, love her.
Worshipped at her feet, yes.
But it was all Stella up on stage doing something, and I didn't quite and she didn't favor women in the class at all, and so I quit that one. And then I went to Lee Strasberg, and I think I was there for another month or 2 months, and I don't know if I got what he was saying, but what did happen was it was a very political situation, and if you weren't working on Broadway, you couldn't find anybody in the class to do a scene with you. And so I bailed on that. And then I went down to the Village to Uta Hagen, at HB Studios, Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen. And I studied for a period of time with Bill Hickey. And I was so green and so naive and so uneducated, I guess you'd say, is that, I don't want to say untalented, but I had only done musical comedy, and I'd only worked with one director. And that director's primary focus as a director was pick up your cues, pick up your cues. So the first time I did a scene for Bill Hickey, and it was not a musical comedy. It was a play called The Days and Nights of B.B. Fenstermaker. I couldn't tell you now if it was a drama or a comedy, but I had a partner, and we presented the scene. And whenever my partner spoke her line, as soon as she finished, I picked up my cue. And so she said a line, I said my line. She said a line, I said my line. When it was all over, there was this pause. And Bill said, sometimes in life, we think before we speak. I was mortified. But that was maybe my first acting lesson.
Well, obviously we learn from the people that we work with. Who would you consider some of the greatest mentors that you have met and worked with throughout your career?
Bea Arthur.
Bea Arthur.
I mean, I think I learned without even, it was just by osmosis, really, working with her.
And interestingly enough, both of you came from Fiddler on the Roof, or worked, but you didn't work at the same time in Fiddler on the Roof.
No. Bea was the original Yenta, and I think she left maybe 6 weeks after the show opened. I could be wrong, or I think she opened the show, but I don't think she stuck around very long. But we both came from theater. What I think I learned from her primarily was comedic timing, and delivering a line and holding for a laugh. I would like to think that I had already acquired a lot of professionalism, because I started out, my first union job was doing summer stock for 5 months in Augusta, Michigan, where we did everything from build sets to babysit for the producer's baby to, we did everything in addition to acting. And so I came to the television community and then the film community with an enormous appreciation for everybody else that wasn't on camera. And Bea, of course, had that. But she was, I didn't realize until after the show was over how special she was in terms of the way she was on the set. She was the first person in the rehearsal hall. She never left to go, have a 3-hour lunch with somebody, as did other people that I worked with later on. Newer Lines was extremely giving in terms of, we'd have a table read, and if she thought there was a joke that would be better coming from me or coming from Conrad or Bill, she was the first one to say it. It had nothing to do with her being the star. It had everything to do with the show being the best it could. So I learned a lot from Bea. She was the first one to get up from the table to greet a guest artist or just an under 5 player who was coming into the table read. And I have since been on sets where, you walk in, you're the guest star, but everybody's all doing their own thing. And she was a great mentor.
And when you first came to New York, and you go into this in great detail in the book, the route of going and getting roommates, getting your first job in New York, starting to establish yourself. For those out there who are thinking, of course, it's a different New York now than it was then, take us back to that time.
Well, I think one of the things I would say about myself at that time, especially when I look at these young 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds, the kids on what's the name of that series? Anyway, you see these incredible young people who are ready, they're prepared. And you hear some of these young people singing on the music shows now, the contestant shows. And I mean, I went to New York and I was like, the only thing I had going for me was, in those days, the union had to have non-union open chorus calls, basically. Or the summer stock companies had non-union open chorus calls. And, you'd walk in and sing the last 8 bars of your up-tempo tune and your ballad, and with another 450 people, literally. It took me, I was there for almost 8 months before I got my first job, and that was summer stock, and that led to my getting my union card. And then I could go to, I never had an agent. I didn't have an agent until after I was nominated for the Tony in Greece, and then they came looking for me, But in those days too, and I was, I can't imagine if anybody does this now. I had my little 3x5 note cards. I sent out my photo and my resume to every casting director, every producer that was listed in Backstage, or there was another one at that time. I don't even remember what
Show business.
Show business, is that what it was? Yeah. And I sent those cards out, and I made my notes, and I followed up a week later, and I probably sent them to agents too,
Well, it was the same routine when I came to New York. And, I can't even imagine what it's like now.
I have no idea. I really have no idea. But 2 years after I'd been there, I got a call from a casting agent who turned out to be the top casting agent in New York, Shirley Rich, cast all of Hal Prince's things and features at the time. And she had my photo and resume She'd probably had it in a file for several years, but she looked at it and she thought I might be right for Fiddler on the Roof. And so she called me in. So it paid off.
Well, I love the story that you tell that when you went to audition for Fiddler on the Roof, you knew you were going to get it.
I did.
You felt that your grandmother was speaking to you and that this was going to happen.
Yes, yes. My grandmother was psychic. I truly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
When my mom died, just about 19 years ago, or right before my mom died, when she was in the hospital, my grandmother showed up in the room. I saw her there. And so when Shirley called, I believe they called on a Friday. And the audition was set for the following Tuesday. And I was not a person who, oh, I've got an audition, I can't wait to get there, Normally that would have been 4 days of intense anxiety and, just nerves and everything else. But it was like I got this message from my grandmother saying, this is your job. And who knows, maybe it was because I'm Armenian, my ancestors had suffered the first genocide, and Fiddler on the Roof was about the pogroms, or maybe that was all connected in my head. I don't know, but Grandma just said, this is yours. It was a hard audition. It was about 6 hours long, but I got it.
You got it.
Yeah.
And your opening night.
You must know something more about that.
No, I love this story, but that even there you are in the show. You've got a leading role on Broadway, alongside another actress that somehow disappeared from the scene. What was her name? Bette Midler. Yeah. I love the way that you describe her. That she had this dogged determination that she knew. And you said that you knew that she was going to be a major star.
I knew that Bette would be a huge star, a superstar. I just knew because she knew, I guess. But I mean, there was nothing that was going to deter her. For me, it was like, oh, well, the boyfriend's giving, and I mean, I was all over the place. In fact, as we're writing these stories for Grease, I did keep a journal, off and on. And Tom Moore said, what do you remember? What do you remember? I don't remember anything. I went back to the journal. It's blank. It's blank. It's who I was dating. But Bette was laser focused, and that you just knew. You just knew. Fiddler, as you say, I have no recollection of my.
But I mean, beyond the fact that you knew you were going to get this, I also believe, me personally, that you had paid your dues. You had the confidence to walk in there and to deliver the goods and to get cast in the show. But you mentioned, the night that Katharine Hepburn came backstage.
Oh yes, yeah, I was terrified. I was like, just terrified.
Did you know she was in the audience prior to getting the note that she was coming back to stage to say hello?
Yes, because I remember saying to Harry Goss, who was playing Tevye, oh my God. And Harry said to me, she can't give you a job. What are you worried about? Or something like that. It was like, but you say, you had confidence in everything. I didn't really. When I first got to New York, I started studying voice with a classical teacher who had been recommended to me. And she immediately said to me, well, your voice has been damaged in your E and your F, or there's something wrong with your E or your F. And so I spent, I don't know, 9 months studying with this woman. And by the time I finished, I didn't think I could sing. And the fact that they hired me for Fiddler, I really had to talk myself through it. I remember one night, Bet had a friend come backstage. And I was leaving. The show was over and I was leaving. And he said to me, "Oh, I loved your voice. I loved your song." And I said, "Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much." And I walked out and I thought, "Oh, why would he say that to me? He doesn't know me. He doesn't owe me anything, you know?" And it took me a long time. Actually, I'll tell you what it took me, and we'll get to it. But it took me a long time to think, Adrienne, they didn't just hire you because they felt sorry for you or out of the goodness of their heart. Mm-hmm. They must think that you can be doing this, you know?
Exactly.
But the thing that turned around for me finally, I'm going to go back. I mean, I guess you don't mind going into this kind of stuff because...
No, absolutely not.
I had been doing Fiddler for a while. My favorite story about Fiddler is as soon as I signed my contract, I took my contract and my first week's check and I went to Bloomingdale's and I got a credit card. I was a working actor and I had a job for a year.
On Broadway.
On Broadway. And I loved it. And at the end of the year, they made me take a vacation. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, there's another, there's another life out there that isn't just going to the theater. So, but I stayed with Fiddler for longer. And then they were casting, I think it was for the national tour of Zorba the Greek. And I love that show. I mean, I love the songs. Mm-hmm. You're saying life is what you do, you know.
You're an ebb, yeah.
My Armenian background coming up. So I went to audition for Hal Prince, who was my boss. I mean, Hal produced Fiddler on the Roof. And I started singing Life is What You Do. And he cut me off. He said, "What are you singing that song for? You're not right for that. You're right for The Widow. You should be singing something else." And I just, from that point forward, I couldn't audition. I would lose control of my facial muscles. But I finally left Fiddler. Did I leave Fiddler for another job? Or did I just leave Fiddler? I can't remember. I did a summer tour of Fiddler with Robert Merrill. And then I got cast as the lead in an off-Broadway nudie musical. But I was singing 13 songs. I was carrying the whole.
I mean, when you were describing the song
I was singing upside down on a raked bed, stark nude. But I was singing those 13 songs. And the show ran for about 5 months, and we got hit with the off-Broadway strike, and so we closed. Mm-hmm. But I got great reviews, and it gave me back, or if I ever had it, maybe I didn't, it gave me a belief in myself that, oh yeah, I could sing. And, you know, given the right material, I could.
Now, I want to ask you about this show. When you went into audition for it, was this something that you were called into audition for? Or like a lot of people, you were looking for every opportunity that came along?
I don't know, Richard. I don't know how I would have been called in because I didn't have an agent. Mm-hmm. So I have no recollection. I have no recollection. I have very little recollection of any of it. Years later, they asked me to be on the Tonight Show when I was doing Maude, and they asked me to sing. And so I went in for the rehearsal, and Doc Severinsen stood up and started applauding, and all the band stood up and started applauding, and I thought, what's going on? And Doc said, "Don't you remember? We were in the audience when you did Stag Movie." But,
so when you say, "Did you see me in that show?" You mean, did you see me in that show?
But, you know, it was, I needed to open a show in New York and be seen by and everything, because I had gone into Fiddler as a replacement, and you couldn't get anybody to do Fiddler. I mean, it had been on the boards for 4 years, so nobody knew who I was or what I was doing, and so back, what was it called? Not back to school. What did I just say it was called? Stag movie. Stag movie. Stag movie. I was originating a role in New York. It was off Broadway, but that's how I did it.
And then Grease comes along.
And then
before we talk about Grease, I'd like to share a clip. So many of my friends are in this clip. I love this. And this was a few years ago when all of you got together for reunion. But this will give it a little sample, and then we'll talk about Grease on the other end.
Okay.
There are worse things I could do than go with a boy or two, even though the neighborhood thinks I'm trashy and no good. I suppose it could be true, but there's worse things I could do. I could stay home every night, wait around for Mr. Right, take cold showers every day, and throw my life away for a dream that won't come true.
Born to hand jive, baby. Born to hand jive, baby. We're for each other like wop, 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 and blue. Just like my brother is shouting, if it is to do. Chang, chang, changy, changy, pop. We'll always be together. Whoa, yeah.
What a family. What did it feel like to come back and do that number and those numbers again?
It still is a family. It still is. I just talked to Walter Bobby, who played Roger, 2 days ago. It was his birthday. And, I see, well, she wasn't in the, she didn't get it back to New York. Varn Stevens and Marius Small, see them all the time. Meg Bennett, who replaced Katie Hanley, and we all keep in touch.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And let's talk about the road that leads up to Grease and how it all came about. And it was a bumpy road.
It's funny because they asked me to write about my audition and everything, and again, I don't remember. I don't remember most of it. It was right after I blanked on the show again. Stag movie.
Stag movie.
I guess they must have called me in on. I don't know. I don't remember if I just remember meeting with the director, Tom Moore, and he asked me who my favorite groups were from the 50s and 60s. And I told him Johnny and Joe and the Drifters and the Platters. And years later, Tom said, I didn't know anything about the music from the 50s and 60s. I was just looking for honesty. And so he must have thought I had it. And so I went in and I auditioned. I do remember this really tall fellow standing next to me. And that turned out to be Barry Bostwick.
Yeah.
And I sang Love Potion No. 9 and Over the Mountain, Johnny and Joe, Over the Mountain. And then it was Christmas vacation. So I flew to LA with my boyfriend to be with his family for Christmas. And a couple days before Christmas, I got a call from the producer saying, we'd really like to see you again. Can you come to a callback? No, I mean, this is 1971. I mean, people didn't just buy airplane tickets. Who had the money to do that?
But you know, there's a theme throughout your book that every time these opportunities came your way, you truly wanted to put your personal life first. And it was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm in a new relationship, or I'm this, and I can't do that right now. And somehow careers don't always operate on the same time frame or timeline that you're on.
You know what? And especially once my children came along.
Yes.
My career has always taken second place.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's no question about it. But I couldn't. I mean, we were going to celebrate Christmas, and I couldn't afford a ticket and everything. God love them if they didn't call me right after Christmas and said, look, if we can wait for you until New Year's Eve day, December 31st, can you get back here? And I thought, you know what, if you don't want to be unemployed the rest of your life, you better, I don't even think you could change tickets in those days. I don't remember, but I flew back. I auditioned for them around 11 o'clock on New Year's Eve day. And they hired me at 4 that afternoon, and we started rehearsals on January 2nd.
And the rest is history. But you were nominated for a Tony Award, and you go into detail about, I don't think that backlash is the right word, but there were obstacles that were placed in front of this entire company from the producers of the Tony Awards, and
maybe blacklisting is a better word than that.
Okay.
The Alexander Cohen, who was the head of the organization at the time, Antoinette Perry Awards, I guess, or what? I was so naive. I didn't know much about any of that, but we were on a Broadway contract because we were playing to a large house.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not in the Broadway neighborhood. It was downtown at the Eden Theater. And so, they didn't think we were eligible for Tonys. And our producers, Ken Wasteman and Maxine Fox, they worked their magic, and they got, I don't know if they threatened them or if they were going to sue or whatever, but suddenly, okay, you can be eligible. But Cohen said, it's going to be over my dead body if anybody wins. And he didn't die, and none of us won, but that's okay.
Talk about the legacy that you've got behind you in this show. But you left the show when you got the audition to go in and audition for Maude, and the other actress who played Carol originally, but they felt that she was too close to Bea Arthur in terms of the way she delivered her lines.
I think that was some of it. I think also she didn't want to move to LA. Mm-hmm. And she's a marvelous actress, really a wonderful actress, comedian. But she had been established in one of the episodes of All in the Family as being Maude's daughter. And I got a call to go in and meet Norman. I think his casting director had seen Grease, or he had seen it or something, and they thought I might be right. I guess he hadn't seen it, because when I went in to meet with him, he said, the character had already been established as having a 7-year-old child. And he said, you don't look old enough to have a 7-year-old child. So I said, okay, thank you. And I went back to my job. Mm-hmm. And then about a month later, they came and called and said, we need you to come to LA and audition, because they couldn't find the person they needed in Los Angeles. So I was doing Grease. I owe an enormous debt of gratitude to the producers and to my understudy, Joy Rinaldi, because they said I could leave the show for one night to fly out and do the audition. And so they hired me from there. Mm-hmm. So as I'm reading all of these wonderful stories that we hope will be in the book, I realize there's a part of me now, at the time I didn't think about it, but there's a part of me now that really regrets not being able to have stayed with the show longer. We started rehearsals in January, we opened in February, and I left the end of June. So I didn't have a long run with Grease. And
well, you say in the book, and the book, came out several years ago, but you say in the book at that time that you've never seen the movie version of Grease.
No, I've never seen it.
Is that still the same?
Yeah, no, I've never seen it. I'll never see it. I'll never see it. And the reason why is I was in a store one day and they had Muzak playing, and what is that song? What is that song? It sounds like, there are worse things I could do, but it's sort of a jazz waltz or something. It's a totally different. And then I realized it was the song from the film. And I thought, oh, you know what? I have such strong, fond, loving memories of the production that we did, which was much raunchier, I'm sure, not having seen the film, but was much raunchier and much more gritty and much more maybe realistic. I don't know. And when I thought, well, if that's the approach they took to that song, I don't think I want to see it. I'll just stay with my memories of.
And that's great. And we've got the book to look forward to. I don't want to run out of time, and we're going to run out of time, but I want to talk about your career doing these horror films. And I heard one interview where you said you're not even a fan of horror films.
No. The only time I see horror films is when I'm video captioning them for the blind. I don't want to go see horror films. I don't think I've even seen all of mine, but I do have one that is making the rounds of the festivals right now. It will be distributed. European release, hopefully fairly. I mean, as soon as anybody can go see anything in a movie theater, but that I am rather proud of, because although it is a horror film, it is a politically or socially significant film about fracking. It's called Unearth, and I was able to sit through that one. I mean, it gets pretty tense at the end, but it's a really, I think it's sort of an important film about the horrors of fracking. Let's put it like that.
Yes.
But no, I am not a horror fan at all. I mean, I've seen the major ones that I've done, but I don't like to be scared. I love action adventure and intrigue and espionage, but I don't want to. Plus, so much of what is produced these days is slasher stuff, and you 3 minutes into the movies, 6 people have just been beheaded in the most god-awful ways, and you don't even know who they are, and you don't care, and so I don't want to see that.
And imagining a non-pandemic world, what is the one thing that is still on your bucket list that you've always wanted to do that you have not done so far?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is travel, but you're asking about theater or it might.
No, anything.
Oh, I want to go to Scotland. I want to go to Wales. I want to go to Portugal. I want to go to. I might want to go to China. I really wanted to go to China after Shirley MacLaine did her documentary, but that's many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. I actually took one movie. I don't know where you are in the memoir, but
no, I've read everything.
Have you read everything? So I took one movie just because it was shooting in Moscow, and it gave me a great chapter for the book.
Is there going to be a follow-up to the book? It's been a few years since you wrote it, and a lot's happened since then.
I did do I guess you'd call a rewrite of the book that was released digitally, just bringing it up to date. A couple of little things, you know. My aunt that I spoke of, who died at 101, you know, she's no longer with us, and so I just made a couple of adjustments to reflect. But I don't know that there's. I certainly not on my mind right now. You know?
Well, I've got a very special clip that I'm going to end today's show with. But before we get there, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did. Thank you, Adrienne, for doing this. It means the world to me. If you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you did, please go to my website, which is richardskipper.com. Sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to boost me in other markets. I also end every show by asking everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, go to the fourth name, and then go to Amazon.com and order 2 copies of Adrienne's book. One for yourself and send one to your 4th friend, because we have barely scratched the surface here in this incredible life. Now, before we end, I've, you know, and the clip that I'm going to show, and I hope you're going to enjoy it as well. But a few years ago, you did the national tour of Pippin.
Yes.
And I want to, how that came about and your experiences doing the show.
Well, that came about as an offer. It was a huge commitment because it was a year, almost a year. They allowed me to leave to get my kids into college and you know, a couple of other things. But it was an offer. I watched Andrea Martin do the number hanging upside down from the trapeze, and I thought, you know, I'm not a big musical comedy fan. I don't stay current, but this is not an easy role to turn down. It's not the kind of thing. When Carnival came along, the HBO show, and I was in my early 50s. Again, I said, you know, women my age do not get this kind of role very often. A snake dancer who has a love affair with a 23-year-old or whatever. I felt the same way about Pippin. You know, it's not very often you're going to get to do something like this on. So I had a great time.
Well, I'm going to share a clip of you in Pippin. So you're all in for a real treat if you haven't seen it. Before we get there, I want to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything we've discussed today, anything we didn't discuss that you wish that we had, or just any message that you want to put out to the world right now. It is Thanksgiving week, so you can share your gratitude with the world. And again, thank you for being here today.
Just please be safe and wear your masks and keep your distance and help us get through this. And lately in order to fall asleep in these troubled times, I've found myself right before I fall asleep, just going over, I am grateful for. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes I start with the A's and I, you know, and I'm usually asleep by D, but just love the person next to you. I mean, even if you don't agree with them, if you know, we've got to get through this.
That's right.
And we've got to understand that we all, you know, it doesn't matter what color we are, what gender we are, what race we are, what religion we are. We need to take care of each other.
Amen. Amen. I love you, Adrienne. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And everyone enjoy this. You're going to.
And lift these noble chins. Here is a secret I never have told. Maybe you'll understand why. I believe if I refuse to grow old, I can stay young till I die. Mon amour. Now I've known the fears of 70 years. I've had troubles and tears by the score. But the only thing I trade them for is